Hi, and welcome to the second edition of the BW Momentum Conference 2025. Today, we're here with Shubhranshu from Tata Motors. It's so nice to meet you. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. It's a delight to be here.
Amazing. So, today I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the history of Indian advertising. What makes Indian advertising so special is that emotional intelligence, that ability to connect with human beings and the people watching them. I think that's what gives it its legacy. So, now we're in an age where people are using generative AI, we're using data driven tactics, we're using algorithmic decision making in order to help our marketing campaigns. In this day and age, how can we still maintain that authenticity that makes Indian marketing so special?
So you're absolutely right that there has been a very strong tradition of creative storytelling in India. And I think a lot of that has also come out of our filmmaking tradition. Don't forget, Hollywood has not only the greatest number of movies, but also the longest duration movies anywhere on the planet. And I think in India, advertising was also a genre of entertainment. Besides information provision, there was a strong culture of discussing advertising, enjoying advertising, commenting and critiquing on advertising. So, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that our affluence has been a trickle down, and televisions reached households pretty late. I mean, the expansion majorly would have occurred anywhere from the late 80s through till the turn of the millennium. And even today, the brute majority of our households are single television households. And so advertising came as a part of the mainstream of entertainment that was on the telly. Having said that, it is also true that our economy has now, in a sense, become pivoted around the mobile phone. And earlier, content was large screen, infrequent, hoping to be a hit, uh, and just immersive. And today, from that large format, large screen broadcast, occasional immersive content, we are shifting, or we have already shifted, to small screen, social, always on, and engagement oriented content. So when you sit in a dark cinema hall and are looking up at a screen and an advertisement comes on, or when you're sitting with your family in front of a television set and seeing the one Chitrahar or the one movie that comes in a week, your relationship with advertising is very different from when you are on a screen flickering between screens, and the duration is also shortened. The second part of your question, which I think is the more important one as we look into the future, is what is going to be the impact of technology in terms of the filtering, the curation, and the algorithmic hold we have. And you have to understand that algorithmic hold is not only about understanding what you like or what people like you like. Algorithmic manipulation, and I mean this in not in the negative sense, but as a factual on a factual basis, algorithmic manipulation essentially means the ability to draw your engagement to any particular content piece, to hold it there, to hook it there, and then keep it always on. So from the earlier impact, which was like a harpoon hitting you, today it's like Velcro. There are thousands of small hooks which engage your mind. And therefore, the shorter the content duration becomes, the more algorithmically filtered, manipulated, curated, or delivered it is. And the more artificial intelligence is able to divine from your pattern of behavior or pattern of behavior of countless millions like you, what it is that they're delivering to you that will hold your attention. The commerciality of it will come front and center. And storytelling will naturally be good to have, incidental, or even take the back seat. And there's nothing good or bad about it. You cannot tell the same story in 10 seconds that you can in 120 seconds. And so when it gets compressive, you have to change the modality, and the context has to be built elsewhere or refreshed frequently, or the encounter has to be uh, more value adding. Otherwise, why would I continuously see little bits of information as content? The other thing people are not fully seized of where artificial intelligence is concerned is, on the one hand, it will subscribe to the platform's requirements and rules. So, however much I may like long form content, however poetic I may think I am, I have to subscribe to Instagram's Reels format to be a hit on Reels. And so, if Leo Tolstoy was living in the present era, he would be an utter Instagram failure because there's no scope for that kind of long form content. The second thing people don't understand is, on the one hand, you are being read, and on the other, you are also, in a sense, conforming to the trend. And that happens at times reflexively, in the sense that, suppose you are on Netflix, the algorithm has decided your genres. I mean, they are able to tell everything they need to tell about you from deciding three genres of movies, right? Which says something about how even astrology in the papers has 12 star signs, but Netflix can tell you everything by knowing three genres and then mapping your behavior. So surveillance is essential to the mix, tracking is essential to the mix, knowing you and countless millions like you is essential to the mix, holding your engagement is essential to the mix, making money on top of that is essential to the mix. So if you had something which was culturally profound or deeply satiated, then the model fails, right? Because the model is supposed to keep you like a hamster on the wheel and just go from one content encounter to the other. Now, there is good in it and there is bad. The good in it is that content has been democratized like never before. Earlier, there were human gatekeepers. They were good and they were bad. They were good in the sense that you could write a letter to a photo editor of a magazine and send some photographs. And if they thought you had some aha factor to it, they would give you a chance. The algorithm will not give you a chance till you are a proven commodity. And therefore, when you are a proven commodity and being injected more and more into countless feeds by the algorithm, others will ape you. And so basically, we end up having many versions of the same, which is why then uniqueness regresses to the lowest common denominator. Unique storytelling starts to flatten out. So it becomes like tofu. It's colorless, odorless, but it's there. Whatever curry it's in, it'll taste like that. The the good in it is that there is no requirement really for massive investment in studios, sound editing, and anybody with a smartphone is a walking, talking content creator, publisher, curator, commentator, what have you. So the biggest change that has happened in the last 10 years is the rise of the influencer economy, and I think it's here to stay. I mean, somebody like an Alex Earl or Mr. Beast, it is just phenomenal what they're managing to achieve, which was inconceivable. And I've spent many years in broadcast TV. The third thing which is good, so influences is good, democratization of content access is good, knowledge, there is nothing which is unknown about the practice of content, which is not available to you at your fingertips today. And so earlier, a Time Life magazine, a CNN, whatever, these were privileged citadels of great quality, great renown, great maybe journalistic sensibility, but nevertheless, they were behind closed doors. They were not open for everybody and anybody to decide what to do. But today, if you want to do or discover anything about Insta Reels or YouTube Shorts or whatever, TikTok, where it exists, you just have to figure it out. They are facilitating you to be on board because they need more and more like you. Right. So these, to my mind, are the good things. The bad thing is scale. You think you've become a publisher, but nobody's seeing you. So, and you can't really float a showboat in a bathtub. So you need scale. Uh, and scale doesn't come when one realizes that the platform gets much greater share of the magic than the content creator may. Second thing is it's a steep pyramid in the sense that people think, oh, I'm going to do something, it's going to go viral, and then storytelling will take care of itself. No. In my assessment, the more and more the compressive hold of platforms takes over, less and less there is organic virality. In fact, I would say it has ceased to exist. It is all push button virality, which needs major hubs and nodes to push you. It needs the support of very large influencers. And most of all, it needs those hidden hands that control the algorithm to push you into the feeds. In the last 15 years, somewhere suddenly and quietly, social networks became social media, and that change was not even commented upon. And earlier it was asynchronous. It was based on your fraternity. So if you were friends with me, you would get my feed more or less in the chronological order in which it appeared. You would not get other people's feeds. Today, it has become virtually nothing to do with your friend circle. Like, for example, TikTok's For You feed or an X For You feed is purely algorithmically pushed to. So, this is a major change, I think, which is not appreciated. The third, so one, scale is not being achieved. Two, it is algorithmically manipulated. I would say the third big negative is uh, we have more of the same. So nothing is profoundly satisfying. Nothing is memorable. It just flickers on and off, on and off. Brian Eno, the famous English musician, had made an album called Music for the Airports, I think in the late 70s, in which he coined the term ambient music. Ambient music is the kind that plays in the spas or in an elevator, where if you miss a part of it, no harm done. If you want to listen to it, to meditate on it, to reflect upon it, very good. If you want to completely ignore it and work on your laptop, no problem either. So content cannot be ambient. Content has to grab you, and
Right.
provoke you, and make you think. And if it's ambient, it means good if it's there, couldn't care if it's not there. And that kind of engagement then makes it imperative for these platforms to just flood you with more, because the model, like I said, is basically all advertising led. Last year, for the first time in the world outside of China, there was $1 trillion of advertising revenue. 700 billion, this is just south of $700 billion was digital.
Wow.
$250 billion came to Google YouTube ecosystem. Just about 200 or maybe short of 200 came to Meta ecosystem, Facebook, Insta. About $80 billion was between Amazon and ByteDance, that is TikTok outside of China. 8-10 billion a piece for Snapchat, Twitter, etc. Now, I call them Go Me's on talk. I've written articles on them. Google, Meta, Amazon, TikTok put together are 65% of the 700 billion.
Wow.
So, in some ways, it's a great time for marketeers and brand builders because they have just these 4 or 5 platforms to talk to. And on the other end, it's a horrifying thing because everything from access to eyeballs is with these large platforms, and it's becoming stronger and stronger, their grip. So, this is the reality of where we are. But coming back to your original question, India has a vibrant economy. We are the largest, fastest growing economy in the world at some $4 trillion. It's 7%. Every 10 years, we will double. Every $1 trillion and every decade will behave differently. It is also the most incredibly young country on the planet, besides being the most populous. 400 million Indians, 40 crore Indians are less than 20 years of age. 65 crore Indians are less than 32 years of age. So they will be consuming content for a long, long time. The eighth schedule of the Constitution has 18 official languages. There are perhaps 100 dialects and other language clusters. Almost everything has a thriving ecosystem in media, young people, rising economy, flourishing media ecosystem, great storytelling. Punjabi families in Delhi are watching dubbed Malayalam films. People are dancing to Bhangra tunes deep in the south. So there is a lot of pollination that's happening across the country. It is a great time for storytelling, and I'm sure advertising will continue to be in the mainstream of Indian content.
Incredible. So, there's one last question I want to ask you. As someone who has watched the advertising industry sort of transform from its golden days of almost being entertainment to what it is now, do you ever find yourself getting nostalgic over those times where creative storytelling and innovative storytelling were at the forefront of forming marketing campaigns?
Well, thanks for making me feel terribly old, first of all. I'm not so nostalgic. I began life in 99 at Hindustan Lever, but yes, on a serious note, there is definitely scope for nostalgia. I'll tell you why. Not because of the change in advertising. You see, when suppose I have a heart attack now and I go to a hospital, God forbid, I am 100% sure I'll get better medical care than my grandfather would have had if he had a heart attack 40 years ago. When I go and sit in an aeroplane today, it's much better than the aeroplanes that I traveled in the early 80s, which I remember, which were turboprop Fokker friendship type aircrafts. It's just better machinery, it's better safety, it's better everything. If I go to a university today, I am bound to get better pedagogical tools. I mean, whether it is computing environment, etc., infrastructure is better. But in advertising, you cannot say that the ad that is being made today is decidedly better than what was made 50 years ago. It is a matter of interpretation, context, enjoyment, and appreciation. So, in the creative arts, there is no defined arrow of progress to say, this is better than that. If I said who is the greatest Urdu poet of all time, you may think it's Ghalib, somebody may say Mir Taqi, third person may say Faiz, and so on. So it is all a matter of personal taste, collective taste. Having said that, one thing has changed. And I grew up in the 80s and early 90s in school. Advertising was one to many. It was all of us saw the same ads, all of us knew the same hits, all of us knew the same songs. Cinestars lasted across two, even three generations. Now I call it the T20fication. It comes faster, ends faster, very explosive while it lasts, but it's come and gone. And it is all 1:1. So if you were sitting with your phone here and I was sitting with my phone here, and even if the heaviest incidents of paid advertising encountered, you are seeing it in some context and I'm seeing it in some other context. So this collective thing about the message reaching everybody at the same time, that collectivism is gone. Therefore, ads like Hamara Bajaj or Chal Meri Luna or कोलगेट का सुरक्षा चक्र अपनाइए और तंदुरुस्ती की रक्षा करता है लाइफ बॉय और मेरा रेक्सोना. These were mainstream culture builders. Today, culture building by advertising is becoming more and more rare. Not because the work is poorer. In fact, it may even be better, but because it is not going out to everybody at the same time, and culture requires common currency, right? If I give you Vietnamese currency here, it will have no meaning to you unless you go to an exchange. If I tell you a joke in Mandarin, you will not laugh if you don't know Mandarin. So there has to be a common context and a reference to context, right? And projection, we are in a business of projection. If we saw a physics Nobel laureate here and if you didn't know him or her, you would think it's just another person. But if you saw a movie star, you will immediately recognize them. Not because they are better or worse than the physics Nobel laureate, but because you recognize them, because they are on a projected screen and everybody has seen them, and their fame is their currency. So in advertising, there are four or five outcomes. One, the economic outcome, which is a heavily advertised brand which has strong equity, will have greater pricing power. Second is the sociological angle, which is that everybody collectively, you know, responds to a brand. You feel like you're a part of a tribe, and I've worked with great brands like that, like Royal Enfield, etc., where there's a sense of being a part of a community. Third is the utilitarian point of a brand, view of a brand, which is I don't want to go through the hassle of deciding what. Once I've made up my mind, I just become loyal because it's a shortcut. It's a mental shortcut, a heuristic to get to what I need. Last but not the least, the most profound is it's a cultural symbol. I like to wear a kurta and a dhoti or a pajama because it projects Indianness from me, for example. So there are various ways. But in all of these things, you need to have common understanding. If you don't have common currency, and it develops out of uh, engagement with the content, right? If I keep telling you I'm a funny man, I'm a funny man, I'm a funny man, after four or five times you'll think I'm a jerk. But if I tell you jokes and you laugh, then after three or four jokes, you will automatically in your head conclude that I'm a funny man. That's how advertising works. Now, if it's broken up into different people, each being fed personalized or hyper personalized content, they will not collectively esteem the brand. So it doesn't become an cultural icon, right? Coca-Cola Americana, Levi's jeans Americana, because they are so deeply associated with the American way of life, for example. Uh, so that nostalgia is actually for not only the fact that we celebrated those or we grew up with it, or by the way, nostalgia is always about wanting to live an earlier part of your life because man wants to be immortal, right? So the older I will get, the more nostalgia I will have. 9-year-old doesn't have nostalgia. Right? But the real cause for nostalgia is that advertising, from becoming a profound culture builder and having a one-to-many connect, has in many ways become drip feed and one-to-one. That I think is the major change.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that insight. It was so wonderful speaking with you. Thank you so much for joining us today.